what's your opinion on the next 5 years? I mean, there's a $9 trillion opportunity. We talked on this show about owners still needing education. Advisory is still young, but the profession is still relatively young. But the need is here now. It's not like when you became a SEPA in 2014, which we're waiting for this $10 trillion.
Oh, no, it's here.
It is here. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider, hanging out again with Amy Wirtz, our 2024 Exit Planner of the Year. So we've spent a lot of time with Amy this year, and we started the year in January doing a little flip the script where you were able to interview me and talk about our 15 or so year relationship together. Then just a couple months ago, we talked about your practice and how over the course of now a decade, you've embraced the value acceleration methodology, how you've specialized your practice. What I wanted to do on today's show, because I think it's timely as we all are now leading into the Exit Planning Summit over at the Sunseeker Resort in Charlotte Harbor, Florida, I wanted to talk to you about kind of industry trends that we're seeing and maybe different statistics. It's something that we'll see at the Exit Planning Summit. Again, it's always that big coming together of everybody. But we start talking about trends and topics, and I just thought it would be timely. I also would like to announce, for those of listening to the podcast, that Amy will be our MC of the Exit Planning Summit. So another pass the torch, if you will. We were laughing pre-show here that she's like, what do I... Well, we're going to have to spend some time together. So,
what does this really mean?
I think I've emceed the summit for the last probably 6 or 8 years. And so I'd love to pass that torch with you so I can actually get in there and actually hang out and shake more hands of our certified exit planning advisor community and all of the advisors and partners that come together at this event. So I want to break this into 2 segments of the show. The first segment, I want to talk about advisors. The next segment, I want to talk about owners.
Okay.
And I want to talk about trends and topics and gaps that you might be seeing in the SEPA community, also as a faculty member. Okay. So how do you see people teaming? So again, we've talked about this on previous episodes. You teach our teams module. There are 7,000 certified exit planning advisors across the market today. I think teaming is one of those big topics. It's like a little bit overwhelming, frankly, I think, for people. Yeah. So what are you seeing in teaming? Has it become easier since you've become a SEPA? What are some key things that you're seeing in the collaboration world right now? And is it in terms of filling up your exit planning team?
Well, I think there's a couple changes. One, there's more of us, which makes it easier to find people with common languages and education to team with, which is cool because that's, as you know, a mantra that I've used from the very beginning, that if you want to be an effective team, you have to have the same language. So that's easier teaming process. 2, COVID happened. COVID taught us that not everything has to be done live, which makes teaming a little more easier. And what I mean by that is, most of the community knows I work rural a lot. I am in Nowheresville, USA a lot. And so finding, lawyers, especially accountants today, oh my gosh, the world has changed so much in the accounting world since when I started SEPA. It is nice to be able to have owners understand that the people that are being used to help them in their journey of transition of ownership don't have to be in the same town or even within a 2-hour drive, because we have Zoom and we have these video conferences. It's allowed me to open doors more than I used to be able to do, right? I still have the challenge. My farmers want local people.
Yeah, I get a lot of emails like that actually from SEPA saying, "Hey, I need like an Iowa or a Nebraska person," and I'm like, "Well, I mean, I can recommend those too, but you're limiting the quality of advisor too if you only look in your backyard." But it does seem actually they're pretty passionate about that.
Yeah, they are. There's some, you got to remember, owners affect their community.
Yeah.
And they feel they should be giving back to their communities by using advisors from their communities because that's part of the business world. And they feel strongly about that. The community has supported their growth. They want to support community growth. So it's a little bit of, I know where they are. I know who I can go to them, right?
Yes.
But I have a little story I can tell about this. So I have an organization I've been working with, had the pleasure of working with from Gen 4 to Gen 5 readiness, right?
Very cool.
And I was there from a small rural town, but they are a pretty big company, and they've always used local advisors, local CPAs, local attorneys. What they have found is that their attorneys and their accountants can't find the next generation of advisors.
Wow.
It's hard for these, especially accountants, to find. Accounting is really shy of employees. There are not enough graduating people to come in and replace all the accountants that are retiring. They are working their heinies off, and they can't find them role. So what I've been able to do is coach them to go beyond their local community. Now, this is something new in my SEPA practice, you guys. As you're in your SEPA community, one of the things that you can do is help your owners learn to interview and select advisors. And that has been an evolution of my practice. Like, owners know how to produce widgets, or they know how to farm, or they know how to run a campground, but they feel insecure in selecting professional advisors, especially family transitions. So I want you to think about that. So many family transitions not only own the shares of what they own, but they take the transition of advisors. So my dad has trusted this person for 25 years. Well, I guess I'll just use them.
Yeah, I'll just bring them with me.
Right? Because I grew up, I knew them when I was 7 years old, so I'm just going to use them. Well, that's great, but most of the time, those people get old. And they're going to retire. And so the next generation has to find, right?
Yes.
And that includes banks.
Yes.
And that includes insurance. And that includes wealth advisors, if they have them. It includes estate attorneys and business attorneys, right? And accountants.
Right.
But most of our, as you saw in the change in the Owner's Readiness Survey, used to be accountants were the most trusted advisors, and now it's wealth advisors.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to challenge EPI on that in a minute.
Okay.
But
what's the challenge?
the challenge is we're really heavily weighted with wealth advisors.
Yeah, we have. So I think yes and yes. I mean,
Yeah.
the EPI community is certainly weighted with some like about 55% financial advisor. But you got to remember the survey is independent,
Right?
So it wasn't like CEPAs were necessarily sending
it to their clients.
It was
Yeah.
third-party market research. But I do think this example of CPA versus FA financial advisor. The FAs have just plainly made more investment in education and branding of exit planning.
They have,
right?
And because of that, they're impacting the knowledge of owners more.
Right.
So I was sharing over the summer with Sam and some of the other marketing team that when I came in, my class was mainly accountants.
It was back in 2014. It would have been mostly.
It was
CPAs.
mostly accountants because
100%.
they were trying to find business development opportunities and more wealth creation for their firms.
Yep.
And they had a group of retiring accountants that didn't want to practice tax returns anymore, but they still wanted to use their client base.
Yes.
So here's another way for us to use our client base, another service provider, right? Well, then they all retired and COVID hit, and being an accountant sucked. During COVID, they had more delays and more tax returns and more complications, and I think it pushed a lot of them into retirement. They were exhausted, really exhausted, and they can't bring in enough to fill those seats. And so, the wealth community picked up that whole branding, that whole opportunity for education and next level of business, and I think it's changed where the owners are getting their education from.
It's true.
Very much so. But that also means our teaming changed.
Right. Yeah, it would. Right.
Right. And so, I've always networked a lot with accountants. And even though I'm not a friend of math, I surround myself with people that are, and those are accountants and wealth planners, right?
Right.
And so I think that has really changed our teaming opportunities, where we get referrals from, where we give referrals to, how we support those on our team. I mean, it's really hard for accountants to dig deep into other work right now, especially rural accounts, because they don't have enough staff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super interesting, especially in the rural communities, right? Because I guess my the picture I paint for myself is these, more veteran CPAs, and there's not a lot of people in the rural community that says, I'm anxiously awaiting to go get my CPA and come up behind the partners that are now retiring. So finding good quality. I wonder, looking out, right, if those farmers will almost just be forced to go more virtual and
They
say,
will.
Look, I'm not going to see my CPA down the street at the coffee house, every morning, but I'll see them once a quarter when they come in, or twice a year when they come in, and then I'll have access more virtually to just change the way they do business a little bit. So the other thing I think is interesting perspective is I believe advisors more so than ever, and I think the trend is going to be the same, have to become educators.
Oh my gosh,
they have to have patience. They have to be willing to teach and listen. What do you feel about that? We saw two things in the State of Owner Readiness Survey. One key observation was education works. So if you are patient, if you can educate, you can trigger owner action. Then on one of the other shows that me and you had, we talked about the next generations of owners. And if you peeled out, if you took the State of Owner Readiness Survey and sectioned out baby boomers, so people 60 years old and basically older, and then focus on the people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, you find that they're actually a little bit more willing for education. But the advisor needs to be able to educate. So what do you think about that?
Well, I just think it goes to what is so successful about being a SEPA. So SEPAs have a program that is easily explainable to owners. It is a format for educating and using education to drive business. It is very well designed, and I have very successfully used it that way.
Yeah.
And I really believe, and I talk a lot to my ownership group about my process is, first, we do a readiness assessment of your systems. I come in and I learn from you first.
Right.
In that process, there's a little bit of education that goes on to get them ready for the next phase of work, which we call phase 2. In phase 2, they have to be empowered with new knowledge to make decisions on what they're going to pick up and do for value enhancement and system enhancement and alignment next.
Yeah.
And what you cannot align when people don't have the same information.
Correct. Right. Absolutely.
And this process that we teach at EPI, the SEPA methodology, is language that we can teach and methodology that we can teach that gives equal balance between interest groups to align on how to make decisions and why to make decisions.
100%. So let's talk about the future of perhaps the certified exit planning advisor community. One of those other 4 key observations from the State of Owner Readiness Survey is that when you became a SEPA, they talked about a $10 trillion opportunity. Yeah. What we're seeing now is that it's a $14 trillion opportunity. So it hasn't decreased. It's pretty dramatically increased, which I think presents a pretty cool opportunity. So I want you to tell me if I'm feeling it the right way. I believe, both as an owner and as somebody that represents a community of advisors, that the way of doing business in the future is value acceleration and utilizing a SEPA. I think what I would like to see in 10 years is that almost like when you hit a certain point, you need a fractional CFO. Your top 2 advisors, typically when you talk a business owner, I have a CPA, I have an attorney. I'd like them, when they say, who's your top advisor, it isn't financial advisor, CPA, attorney, it's whoever my SEPA is. Do you think it's that strong for owners as we lead into that $14 trillion opportunity? Is it the next CFP? Is it the next CPA? Where the owners surrounding themselves with certified exit planning advisors is the way of doing business here in America?
I think that is a phenomenal goal for EPI. From a person that's out there working with the business community, I'm still spending a lot of time telling people what a SEPA is.
Right. So you're still out there, lots of education.
Lots of education.
Right.
I think you're probably 5 years away from that.
Yeah. Okay. That's good perspective. Yeah.
And I think, podcasts and articles
books.
and thought leadership is really important.
Yeah.
However, where we really make a difference is every time we interact with an ownership group and it goes well, and then they go out and they tell their friends, and their family sees it, and their next generation sees it, that they then become the disciples of the educational process you guys created.
Right.
So we can, as consultants, take it so far, but I think the next wave of getting to that I think it was called Blue Ocean. We talked about Blue Ocean event, right?
Of course.
Is doing it an and. So the SEPAs go out and they work with the current ownership group. Mm-hmm. The next and is, EPI to this point in time has been a journey about educating the consultants that work with owners.
Sure. Right.
I think the next opportunity we have is educating owners with our curriculum that leads to business for our SEPA community. Mm-hmm. So soft education, knowledge education, awareness, not deep, not consulting, awareness education. So, but the next one is, I'm going to push you here, opening up the SEPA program for youngins.
Yeah.
For next generation development.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that with your time here at EPI headquarters too, about how we're exposing to that next generation leader. We had an intern actually over the summer of last year, and that was one of her kind of takeaways was at 20 years old, going back to school, like where do I get some of this education as a 20-year-old? I'm not an owner. I don't know if I'm going to be a traditional advisor, but I'm going to be in business, maybe even impacting an owner's company internally one day. Can I learn more about what it means to be a value creator? And can you imagine if we could educate that person at 20 years old?
I know.
What that might be like. That's why I think it's kind of like, I always think it's kind of funny to talk about. It's like a movement, though. It's like a change of the way we do business, kind of the way we do business in America. I think it could be that big.
And the question is, that's a business decision for EPI. Like, is that the right decision? But I do think that, like when I go into family businesses, I use this stuff for the next generation development.
Well, we've had people go to their owner roundtables of some of my friends that are in second or third generation companies, and they said, shoot, man, in that 2-hour lunch roundtable, I learned more about doing business there than I did from my dad over the last 10 years of being in his business.
And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
And that's the powerful movement that EPI is going to have an impact.
So we might have talked about this, and I think it's worth sharing to the audience and our listeners. Do you think, so if I go and take EPI into the owner world and do that high-level education with the intent to say I'm going to marry highly educated owners with highly educated advisors, then together you guys are going to go out and do that work. Is that intimidating for our SEPAs, though? Because now I do Scott,
think it's
you're competing with us?
I do think there's a fine line. I think that if we can show our SEPA community that this introduction to our processes creates a movement that creates work for us as SEPAs, that you're not replacing it, that's the sweet spot. Okay. And I'm going to tell you, I was very involved in the Owner Roundtable program.
Right, yeah.
And that Owner Roundtable program changed my ability to do my work. I was in the design of it with you guys. I was in training and the peer group work. And I really believe that process can be helped with a little bit of the beautiful education programs that you create online for SEPAs. Right. If you can have an intro to why we would need to learn about value acceleration methodology for owners, professionally done in sound studio, that drives the awareness of what a SEPA is and gets it to, you need a SEPA on your value acceleration methodology in order for it to work well, and that drives the work. Yeah. And here's this big-ass community that we have. Yeah. Here's our website. This is where they all are. Call them up and use them. Yeah. Then I think that's a synergistic business proposal that only supports the SEPA community.
Totally. That's totally. Well, that's good advice, is that We have. We've spent over a decade now educating and primarily working with advisors. And Dad and I thought when Dad transitioned from being an advisor to being an educator, the way in which to hit the ultimate goal, right, which is to help change owner outcomes, help owners build better, stronger, more valuable, longer-term companies, was to actually educate the advisors first. So we've spent years doing that. But I think it's time that folks understand who the SEPA advisors are. And to your point, it's not that we're trying to take work away or anything like that, but we're actually these are awareness campaigns that are coming out to tell owners that we exist,
right,
and they should be using it. So,
yep.
I want to talk a lot more about owners in this next segment. So just give us a quick break. We'll be right back. Thanks.
Are you a business owner seeking to unlock the true potential of your enterprise? Look no further than the second edition of Christopher Snider's revolutionary book, Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. In this updated edition, Snider presents proven strategies for maximizing your company's value and accelerating growth. Whether you're aiming to sell or simply want to ensure long-term success, this book offers a blueprint for building a thriving, self-sustaining business. Walking to Destiny isn't just another book, it's a game changer, backed by Snider's own experience as a successful business owner and as a SEPA. This book bridges the gap between business owners and advisors, guiding you towards financial freedom. But don't just take our word for it. Hear from those whose lives have been transformed by its insights. One satisfied reader raves, "The best guide for transitioning out of privately owned companies. I recommend it to all business owners and advisors." Another praises it on its focus for maximizing business value, calling it their, quote, principal tool for educating owners. Ready to take control of your business's destiny? Visit walkingtodestiny.com now and use code EXITISNOW to claim your free copy of Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the moment perfect by seizing this opportunity today.
Hey there, business owners. Are you ready for a game-changing opportunity? Introducing the 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report. Over the past decade, this groundbreaking research has reshaped how we view business ownership and exit planning. This report isn't just another study, it's a deep dive into the evolution of business ownership. It shines a spotlight on the crucial intersection of business attractiveness and owner readiness, revealing the undeniable impact of preparation on achieving successful transitions. With younger generations taking the reins, exit planning is taking on a whole new perspective. Education and awareness about preparing for the future have never been more crucial, and with financial readiness leading the charge, there's a clear opportunity for growth and learning. But here's the kicker. The report shows a surge in exit planning education and understanding, yet many still lack formal transition teams, highlighting the essential role of comprehensive support. So who's got your back? Trusted advisors have evolved, from CPAs to financial advisors, making a decade of significant change in support networks. Ready to take the next step towards a successful exit? Dive into the Exit Planning Institute's 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report and start shaping your legacy today. The future is knocking. Are you ready to answer? Discover your readiness level at 2023ownerreadiness.com and take the first step towards a successful and significant exit.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast, hanging out again with Amy Wirtz, kind of talking about trends trends and topics as we lead into our Exit Planning Summit, which we'll be at just in like a couple of weeks. So
Yeah, that's exciting.
I like
right?
I'm
really excited.
I fly out like next week.
Wow.
So anyways, let's focus. So we talked a little bit about like advisor trends and topics. I want to talk a little bit about owners and maybe with a focus in your specialization on family businesses. One of the things that we talk a lot about, and I'd like to have you share your opinion on it, is the concept of gifting your business versus buying the business or selling the business to a third party, taking the wealth and going and doing other businesses, right? So the next generation could be entrepreneurial, but you're into farming and I'm into campgrounds. So let's sell the land or let's convert the land into a luxury RV park and do that style of business. So what are those kind of trends and topics? What's going on in the family business world? Is it like that? This big transition of wealth is coming. And you talked about like the fourth generation. Like to me, that's like amazing. Like you're the fourth or fifth generation. They're still doing the same stuff. I mean, in terms of producing the same similar products as they were 4 generations ago.
Yeah. So one of the awesome things about being part of the Family Business Consulting Group and
Yeah,
all the
right.
public speaking that we do
Yeah.
is I learn a lot. And I had the benefit of right after last year's summit, I was in New York City presenting at the International Family Governance Conference. So that's from all over the world. And it was cool because I was sitting with faculty that are from Germany and Italy and Africa and Australia. Well, our country is pretty young, right?
Oh, yeah,
Right?
definitely. As
And
compared to
so,
other,
right?
yeah, of
And
course.
so these consultants are working with 9 generations.
I've heard
12
I've
generations.
Heard, I remember we did some work with the Cox Family Business Center. Remember that years
Yeah.
ago? And the woman who was the executive director at the time was from Italy, and I had no idea about this. She was the one that first kind of talked to me through it. She's like, "Yeah, Scott, you think like your 3rd or 4th generation companies are cool. Here, we're doing 9th generation over in
it's
Italy."
Pretty amazing stuff,
amazing,
right?
yeah.
So what I would say is our country, as it gets older, and we support family businesses, we're going to see much more in the line of family enterprises instead of family businesses.
Interesting, very interesting.
And so there are a lot more decisions that have to be made about connected wealth and how it's owned and how it's used. So you'll hear, if you look on LinkedIn and you start following family offices,
yeah.
I mean, like that is a growth of family entrepreneurship and family enterprise systems. It's you open up a company that's called a family office. It has a lot less restrictions from the SEC, and future generations opt into the family office and say, we want to grow our wealth connectedly, and we might have liquidation events, but we're going to keep the entrepreneurial spirit alive in future generations by owning multiple businesses, giving generational opportunities for people that might want to go be teachers, but they still have an entrepreneurial spirit and they want to have investments in this family office. Totally different conversations that have to occur, right?
You think that's the way of the future, though, with like younger business, like younger generations taking over to say, look,
I think a
I
percentage
really
of it,
like the concept. As a family business guy myself, it's interesting. Like, I have a 10-year-old son, and he says, he's like, "Hey, Dad, I want to take over your business one day." And I was like, "Son, by the time you're 20, 10 years from now, I might have exited this business." Like, there's just, for me, there's like that maybe this is that generation 1.5, 1.5 that we talked about in me that in one of our previous shows, where I much rather just say, "Well, son, we're going to have generational wealth here. So what are you, if you're entrepreneurial, what is your passion? Is it really education and advisor education, owner education, or is it landscaping, or is it campgrounds?
Plumbing,
is
or
it
what is
plumbing?
it? Right.
Like, we might be able to do something. Or maybe we're just investing in different businesses and taking the knowledge and the methodology that we created, and we're running it in these multiple businesses that we own across all. We have a plumbing business, we have an event management business. I, as at least generation 1.5, think that is the way I would like to go.
I honestly think that will be a huge trend
Okay.
as our country gets older. It is a trend in countries that are older.
Okay. And that'll come here as we grow.
Yeah. And so
As
in
we
the
age.
2024 year, I did a whole bunch of education of families about interconnected wealth held in dynasty trusts. One of the complications that you asked is buy or sell, like
Yes.
gift or
Yes,
ownership.
gift.
So what we talked about at the IFG convention was the United States taxation system is designed for gifting.
It
Not
is, yeah.
for
I
selling.
would say that's fair.
And so one of the reasons our country has more gifting of ownership than it does for selling ownership is because of the tax penalties for selling versus gifting on inheritance, because we have that step up in basis that occurs.
Sure.
Now, if you are a SEPA, you will have learned that there are trust options, slats, grits, grats, and eyelets that can help avoid those things, right? So we have I think I heard the marketing team has a glossary of terms coming
I'm
out,
sure.
right? And
Yes,
flashcards.
yes,
So
we
that
do.
would be, so I think there are ways to do that. But what we teach at FBCG is if you only make these decisions based on taxation, you will complicate the life of future generations. And so what we want, and I think EPI aligns with this, is the tax decisions are one portion of your value acceleration methodology. If you make all of your decisions based on your unwanted partner, you may wind up complicating leadership decisions or governance decisions for future generations.
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
And
That's
I think
that's a really good insight.
I think as we get older,
Yeah.
and if our country keeps the taxation system the way it is, which is a penalty for multi-generational wealth, there will be no ability to sell because of the tax rates incurred by the wealth transfer.
It's too huge.
It's huge.
Too huge. That's interesting. So, talking in the same kind of frame of intergenerational and transitions, one of the other key observations out of the 4 State of Owner Readiness Survey observations we saw was like, I think I just called it family truly matters. And it just stood out to me more so than ever before, though, more so than the 2013 survey that we did 10 years later, the one we released in February of 24. It seemed that family matters maybe in 2 ways. One, so maybe 2-part question. One, there's this second generation that said 82% said they favor an internal option, not necessarily just to family, but to management and to employees. But internal was critical. The other thing that I saw is it was something crazy. Like 74% of family businesses in the State of Owner Readiness Survey said that they were having family meetings at least once per year. And something like 28% said they were having more than one per year. So do you find, so again, that was a sample of maybe 1,500 owners.
Right.
So for somebody that's boots on the ground working with families, are they communicating more? Are they more together? Is there a togetherness? Did the pandemic change any of that? Do you find those to be true in your business where they're meeting more often, they're favoring internal options?
Yes and no.
Okay, fair.
So at Family Business Consulting Group, we believe, and I think EPI teaches this,
Yes.
that there are stages of meetings, right?
Yep.
So it depends how you define a meeting,
Okay.
right? So we teach that there's an evolution of formality that occurs in our ownership systems, our leadership systems, and our family systems. If you were to really dig down into that statistic, how are they defining meeting? Are they defining a meeting in the middle of the factory, on the factory floor, where they spend 5 minutes talking about a decision? Or are they doing a defined family governance meeting where they talk about how ownership and connected wealth is affecting their family system and preparing the next generation for ownership?
That is a good,
right?
That's a good sub-question.
Or are they talking about having an ownership meeting where they give the once a year mandated by law meeting where they have a shareholder meeting, they give financials and they write it up?
Sure.
So we think that, every generation does this a little bit differently. And it usually starts with the entrepreneurship family, the couple that starts the business. They talk about it at dinner after the kids go to bed, or they have a meeting once a year and they go to dinner with their brother-in-law and they go to a fancy dinner, they sign notes, their corporate attorney writes it up and they've had a meeting. That's one, right?
Yeah, okay.
Then they start bringing their kids in, right?
Okay, yeah.
And they may have a meeting about it with that kid about coming into the business, and they're like, okay, you're going to make this kind of money. You want to come work for us? We really need your help.
Okay.
That's a meeting,
That's
right?
a meeting, right?
And then the kid's there for a while, and they're like, can I have a job description? That's another meeting.
That's another meeting.
And can we talk about my pay? Because I think I'm really underpaid. Right? Like lots of times it's underpaid.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, a lot of times it is. And then it's, okay, now, oh, by the way, Joe, we're bringing Jill in, and she's going to be our HR director. And Joe goes, why? Well, because mom doesn't want to work as much, so Jill's going to come here, and she's having a baby, and we want her to have a life balance. Jill's like, what? So I'm going to work 90 hours a week, and Jill's going to work 20? What is she getting paid, right? So then we have more meetings about that. Right. Then we start hiring more people that are non-family members, and we have more HR issues. So we have a little bit more meetings. And then they start fighting.
Yep. Now it all starts to go downhill.
Now we need a lot more formalities. So a lawyer or a wealth planner might sit down with them and go, hey, guys, I'm hearing from the family we're having some issues. Why don't we come in and start talking about the why of ownership? Yeah. What's your vision for ownership? And let's put some formality about distributions and salaries and how ownership's going to be distributed. And so they might meet twice a year. very formally with a facilitator.
So having the facilitator is key too.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's what we do.
Is that work that you do?
That's work I do.
Yeah. So they can also hire you as a facilitator. Right.
And then we design the governance systems.
Okay.
And so those governance systems become much more formal.
Right.
And that formality process is very painful. And it typically, well, but I mean, you think about it. Most people start a business because they don't want formality. They want flexibility.
Tell me about it, right? I mean, our business is approaching 50 employees, so it's like the formalities of me and Josh Koza in the cigar shop in the back, in Lakewood, Ohio. It's way more formal for sure, and it's like it's tolling sometimes.
It is, and it's not the creative work people want to do. It's compliance.
The institutionalized stuff.
Right? Yeah, and so that makes it more difficult. So I would say to you, when it goes couple to couple to couple, there's less formality.
Okay.
When it goes couple to siblings or couple to cousins and siblings, we need more formality.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And Tom Deans dictates that. I mean,
Tom talks about
that, right?
Yeah.
And he talked about how his dad had him become a board member and an owner before he even worked there.
Right.
Well, now because I'm part of FBCG, I'm getting into much bigger systems. Yeah. We talk a lot about ownership where people work in the business and people don't work in the business.
Yeah.
How are you a productive owner if you're not there shepherding it every day? How do you support those that are? What are roles and responsibilities? And how do you develop the next generation of owners? And last summit, I talked about how do you develop a business that continue with no family owners? Yeah. How do you get professionalized management and professionalized boards? So you just cash that check every year, and it's a continual. It's a continual production of money instead of a one-time production of harvest. So I've journeyed through all that, and I actually think if you want to talk about a trend, that's where I have a lot of passion.
Okay.
And I think that our SEPA community needs to start talking to owners about, can we professionalize privately held businesses so it can be held for multiple generations without them actually working there? So we're creating an education format for being non-active owners that know how to govern others and employ good advisors and good leadership teams. So there's a continual stream of income for your family.
Right. The decentralized owner, right?
Right. Really I don't know, where did I learn about that?
Well, I mean, I think to your point, I think it's interesting to spin that into family business because I think when you think about the decentralized owner, generally speaking, people go towards not like non-family businesses or businesses that perhaps want to sell to an external party. Right. Whereas the same concept does apply to the family business, even if they want to transition to the next generation. Right. Is how do we get the owner into the right spot that they want to be in, so that they have room for a ton of passions in their life, including their business, but they're decentralized enough that they don't have to show up every single day. Right? So it's the same concept that we're teaching. I just think sometimes in more family businesses, it's like the next generations of cousins or siblings need to be involved, and they're not thinking about how do we continuously decentralize owners and managers and executives. So my last question around owners is about this $14 trillion opportunity, right? We talked about this before. It's gone from 10 to 14. And if you dissect that state of owner readiness statistic, it's something like $9 trillion is coming in the next 5. So I'm not a big 10-year guy. It's very hard for me to think 10 years from now I'll be 50 years old.
You know what? It's hard for all my owners to think that way.
I like the envisioning exercise. I get that. But I can look at 5, and I can certainly look at 3, and then I can make 1-year plans and 90-year goals. So I'm getting a lot closer to the 5 if I break it down like that. Sure. So as somebody that's been at this for a while, as a faculty member, a super engaged SEPA Exit Planner of the Year, what's your opinion on the next 5 years? I mean, there's a $9 trillion opportunity. We talked on this show about owners still needing education. Advisory is still young, but the profession is still relatively young, but the need is here now. It's not like when you became a SEPA in 2014, which we're waiting for this $10 trillion.
Oh, no, it's here.
It is here.
Well, it's here, and it's in a very different business environment than it was 10 years ago. Yeah. And so here's my cautionary tale here. Okay. And I am I am all about the we're going to transition wealth, right?
Yeah.
But we are sort of at a perfect storm. We just had an election.
Yep.
We have a lot of world events happening.
Right.
And my families are hunkering down for a storm.
Interesting. Yeah.
And they're not ready to let go. And they're not ready to let go to the next generation that hasn't experienced a very rough economic time.
Yeah, fair. Yeah,
And I think we have high interest rates. We have a new president. We have tax changes that are coming up that are very impactful on private companies.
right.
And we don't know where that's going to go. And the estate taxation in this country is going to change dramatically for wealth transfer.
Yeah.
And so is it a good time to liquefy? Could be. It could be the perfect time to get out,
be.
right? But inflation's really bad.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to get better in the next year.
So it might slow. So
I think it's going to slow a little bit.
Because if you think about it, the State of Owner Readiness Survey, though we debuted it in February, that data was really collected in December
Right.
of 23.
Right.
So, maybe they're a little bit more ambitious, and now they might slow a little
I think
bit.
it's going to slow.
No,
I think
do
the
with
market's going to slow.
The baby boomer crowd, which still is 51% of the market, they're all 60. Last year, they all turned 60, and they're all 60 and older. So still age, health, passions, and other passions in life still have to be, I think the average boomer is like 67 years old, so it's got to be still top of mind. But I guess I could still also see them hunkering down, right? More of a traditional baby.
So in my world, remember, most of my families transition from generation to generation. They don't
Right.
sell.
They don't sell.
And so what I'm hearing a lot about is I'm not ready to completely let go because my kids have not experienced a 1977,
Yeah, yeah,
a 1992, or a 2011. And I want to be here to help them go through that. Now, my job as a family business advisor is to say, how did you learn? Did you learn because your dad sat next to you and held your hand during that time? Or did you learn because you had to live it?
Well, to me, it's about preparing the foundation, right? So what do we need in place to help navigate that too? And what can we do better than what you had last time? It's kind of like what me and you, I think, were talking about the other night too, where it's, for me in my business, looking at a fractional CFO, a board of advisors, a head of faculty, these are things that I could put in place for my business partner, my dad, who wants to continuously decentralize.
Yep.
If I put these last things in place, he feels comfortable letting the team run.
Yeah.
And so I would assume it's very similar, right?
is.
So your job then as the family business advisor to say, yes, I mean, not that you can't be around, but you don't need to stick around in the day-to-day to let your son, daughter make this happen. You also have people like me. That's why I'm
Right,
here.
exactly.
Right?
Well, why I'm here and
family
why we have independence on your board or why we're
Exactly.
putting a board
Exactly
in place.
right.
Yep,
Exactly
absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, always great to spend some more time with you. We will see you, hopefully all our audience,
Yay.
at the Exit Planning Summit coming up here in just about 2 weeks, back down in Florida at the Sunseeker Resort. A lot of cool things to be had at this year's summit. A lot of new breakout sessions, a couple of huge announcements. Amy will help me crown the new Exit Planner of the Year, and she'll be emceeing our 2025 Exit Planning Summit. So thank you, Amy, for coming on to another show this year. We really appreciate everybody's time, and we will see you on our next show. So April 30th. Subscribe, listen, and leave a review on all of your podcast platforms. Really appreciate it, guys.
Don't forget to pack your sunscreen. See you there.
See you. Bye.